So I thought I might begin with the opening lines of a long poem. The poem composed bilingually in Yucatec Maya language and Spanish language by the Mexican poet Wilderheim Villegas. El mar en su latir, el mar que dibuja labios a la playa, la piedra que vuelve, el agua música, el agua platicando con la piedra. The ocean pulsating, the ocean painting lips on the sand, the stone rendering the water music, the water conversing with the stones. I do not know the Yucatec Maya language, and as I half read the poems, I have more questions and less answers. The question that the poet Alice Oswald asks, what is water in the eyes of water? And then the other question, what exactly is the difference between thinking about water and thinking with water? And then Mandelstam's question, he says, my epoch, how will I manage to look inside your eyes? And then an encounter with new words, new phrases, like the de-centered human, human time entangled with planetary time, relationality. Here at UBC, I hear this quite a lot. Relationality, connectivity, Earth system, bioregionalism, global carbon and hydrological cycles, epochal consciousness, watershed consciousness. And then the questions of Forrest Gander. He writes, what humans have perpetrated on their environment certainly affects the means and materials of poets, but can poetry itself be ecological? Can it display or be invested in values that acknowledge the interrelationship between human and more than human? Aside from questions of theme and reference, how might syntax, line breaks, and the shape of the poem on the page express an ecological ethic? And then in response, Craig Santos Perez says, all cultures have a tradition of ecopoetry, since one of humanity's primal experiences is our dynamic and changing relationship to the world around us and ourselves as nature, and ourselves as nature. And then the Routledge Companion to Ecopoetics ends its introduction with the question, almost with the question, can poetry make something happen? Ecopoetics, it concludes, can be seen as a capacity of the literary arts to break through the boundaries of genre into new cultural ground, forging an ecology of language, thought, perhaps eventually leading to action, even species-wide transformation. Welcome, everyone. And welcome, Daphne, and Fred, and Annie, and Rita. For me, it is a a huge honor to be introducing you today and to be able to listen to you from this close. Thank you. After short presentations, Daphne, Annie, Fred, and Rita will be in conversation with each other. And a million thanks to Green College, Emma, Heather, and she's here this evening, Sarah, for all your work, for making this event possible. Thank you. And thanks to many Greenies. I've just enjoyed my conversations with you over breakfast and dinner. And I feel you have improved the quality of my life a bit. Thank you. Award-winning Vancouver poet Daphne Marlatt's many publications include poetry, fiction, critical prose, and drama. Steveston, her 1970s long poem collaboration with photographer Robert Minden, conveyed the lives of fisher people at the mouth of the Fraser, Stolo River. Then already polluted. Liquidities, 2013, reprised her earlier Vancouver poems, adding a new title section merging the contemporary city with its environmental situation. Her recent poetry, including a forthcoming title, Splinters and Streams, from Chax Press, Arizona, intensifies this eco-awareness focused mainly around water. Welcome, Daphne.
Thank you, Jaspreet. We can see you all. And wonderful to be reading with Fred, Annie, Rita. This is not just about water.
You need to use the mic, Daphne.
This is not, can you hear me any better with this?
Yeah.
On? Yes, you can. Okay. This is not just about water, what I'm going to read to you. Jaspreet has asked me to talk about a bit about eco-dharma, so that's what I'm going to do. The title, I am the river, and the river is me. And I'll talk about that towards the end of this. What could that possibly mean in so-called real life, where we are constrained by our selfhood, that hood that keeps sliding down to prevent our seeing how we are actually situated on this earth? Decades ago, in the 1970s, I was writing about the history, as Jaspreet mentioned, mainly Japanese-Canadian, of Steveston on the Stolo River. I was feeling the force of that river running out to lose itself in the sea when I wrote these concluding lines. Even whole names along with bits of crockery, water washes, dead dogs, web caught, up under the shadows of buildings men would cast like nets of retrieval, only to cast their names across the line that water washes away, incessant, swollen by reaches of the sea our lives respond to, irresistibly drawn these precarious floats, boats equipped with the latest machinery, radar, sonic scan, drifting limbs extended, sometimes logs and deadheads, sometimes creatures of motive that swim against the source, but always continuing to return, always these lovely and perilous bodies drifting in spawn, swarm on out to sea. The movement of that long sentence, and I only read you part of it, imitates the outward flow of the river, thinking of how the river loses itself in the sea. I was also recalling the fish boats and the men lost at sea, and how, when we die, we as individual entities disappear into a space so much larger than ourselves. The early Chan poets called this space cosmos, and spoke of it as a matrix that generates everything else on this planet. In Awakened Cosmos, the mind of classical Chinese poetry, David Hinton points out that for early Chan poets like Tu Fu, once the mind was silent, meaning once its endless stream of thoughts fell silent, the opening of consciousness becomes a bottomless mirror, allowing no distinction between inside and outside. With no such distinction, we begin to see that in a deep sense, we are not objects or even subjects, but simply webs of relationship, inside, outside, interwoven in a complexity of weavings with other living organisms. We usually make distinctions between living and non-living. For instance, the so-called elements, like water, forgetting the watery liquid of our own bodies without which we would die. We are actually all interpenetrated. But our English language, in its ordinary usage, makes this difficult to recognize. Why? For David Loy, in his 2018 book, Ecodharma, this is the linguistic crux that prevents us from seeing how we are interwoven with so much else on this earth. He points out that because, as children, we learn language through naming objects outside us, we tend to see the world in utilitarian terms. Quote, as a collection of utensils used to satisfy our desires. And this is what constructs the sense of separation between me inside and the rest of the world outside. The movement in English grammar from subject through verb to object outside the self constantly enforces this. In our conceptual grasping at things as external to our subjectivity, he writes, quote, we constantly overlook that the forms we grasp by naming, including ourselves, are the presencing of a generative no-thingness that is nameless, formless, and wondrous. That last phrase, a generative no-thingness, nameless and formless, is referred to as Chan. For those early Chinese poets well-versed in Taoism, Chan could be sounded in the act of composition, of writing a poem, putting words to a recognition of the interwovenness of objects and attention. That's a form of meditation. Pictogrammic language, of course, facilitates this. We don't have a pictogrammic language. But essentially, it requires letting the self-structures of thought fall silent. Not an easy practice in our contemporary culture, full of the experiences texted, spoken, written, sung by individuals proclaiming their individuality. But I keep thinking it's possible. My recent poems tend to be very short line with more inner spaces, not to write about, around, or imitate so-called reality, but to invoke it in all its interwovenness. And yes, I'm still bound by English naming. So here's a recent one, not entirely successful at all, but an attempt. It's the origin is the Parks Board daylighting of the stream that runs through Tatlow Park in Kitsilano. And I walked through the park at a time when they were still constructing this. So that was the beginning of the poem. And it's also about traffic. Daylighting the stream. Water on brick's black burn trail. No appointment necessary, shines opposite. Lapidarian rain, coming or going, amounts to the same. Traffic in blue fin tunas, luxurious world, meaning our appetite, oceanic. As war looms its threadbare poetic, there, our Tatlow Park's clogged stream, daylit riparian, not yet. Accessible, are you? A cell phone only household? Cliff down flow to inlets, salt stream. Now sealhead surface, where coho waver, fish fishing. Through toxic rain runoff, ozoned 6 ppb quinone from tires. This webwork we've woven, are woven into. Hinton's big challenge to eco-aware writing these days. It is only, this is a quote, it is only in this experience of reality as an all-encompassing, emergent present that non-mimetic language can exist. For each word needs to operate at the very origin moment, word and thing emerging into existence simultaneously. The river is not out there, she is also running through me, writes Sophie Ann Edwards in the book that documents her several years' relationship with the river in Ontario, Conversations with the Kagawong River. She approaches language in various ways, sometimes simply as letters of the alphabet marked on pieces of paper attached to trees on the riverbank or floating down the river itself. She also uses photographs and various ways of placing words on the page. Unsettle my nouns, become verbs, she writes, attempting to cut through our object out there grammar. Or, as Hinton puts it, quote, the cosmos as a single tissue, dynamic and generated through and through, matter and energy, a single breath force, surging through its perpetual transformation. To reach the Maori perspective in which I am the river and the river is me, a perspective made legal when New Zealand passed a 2017 law granting personhood to the Wanganui River with accompanying rights. Personhood. To reach that deep understanding of what we usually think of as an object, just a watercourse somewhere out there. To deeply embody that Maori view counters the prevailing view that nature is merely the property of humans to use or misuse in whatever way profits us. Here's the Roberts Bank terminal and what all that shipping will do to orcas and salmon in the strait that we call the Salish Sea, and we don't live up to that name. To view the online film trailer, I am the river and the river is me, is to recognize a vivid sense of Maori belonging that we have no name for. We have looked at nature merely as object, as resource, something out there to ransack for human benefit, profit alone, completely forgetting water was our mother, the sea, as paleontology reveals, our actual source. For eons ago, its single-celled life forms moved onto shore and gradually evolved into humans. This long and wide view positions us differently on this earth and even within the language we as poets use. I'm only beginning to have a sense of that. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Daphne. The river is running through me. Poet scholar Rita Wong attends to questions of respect for life, language, water, and land. co-editor of the anthology Downstream, Reimagining Water. Wong is the author of several books of poetry, including Current Climate, published in 2021, and was awarded the Latner Griffin Writers Trust Poetry Prize in 2024. She lives on unceded Coast Salish lands and works at Emily Carr University of Art and Design. She calls for collective action to address the climate crises and systemic inequities with an economy of care and solidarity. Please welcome Rita Wong.
Thank you, Jaspreet. Maybe I'll project as well.
Yeah, please do.
Thank you. I am going to read 3 poems, and I think I would like to start by acknowledging that many years ago I was at a conference at Musqueam, and I forget the name of the elder, but there was an elder who said that water does not need to be managed. What people need to do is manage ourselves, and the water will be fine. In other words, the water doesn't need us, but we need the water. And so what does it mean to manage ourselves? And the epigraph for Undercurrent has 2 quotes. One is by the beloved solo writer Lee Maracle. She writes, "We do not own the water owns itself." And the other one is a more recent Taoist source, Bruce Lee, and he basically says, "Be water."
And it's still hard to hear. Can you?
Oh, sure. I can speak a little louder and slower. Sorry.
No, it's the mic probably.
Well, I don't know if this mic is on, to be honest. But so this idea of managing ourselves and our impact on the water, I think, leads me to my first slide, which is, let's see. Just to acknowledge the work, as some of you may know, I was involved with the mass movement to try to stop the expansion of the Trans Mountain Pipeline, which was nonetheless completed this past year. But there are other pipeline projects that are still endangering the watersheds that we all need, including the PRGT, which is the Prince Rupert gas transmission line up north. I put on some information about a webinar that's happening in a couple of weeks, organized by a group called Change Course, which is a youth-led movement trying to end fossil fuels and get us towards the just transition that we need. And I think that just transition is very much something that comes into focus if you start paying attention to water and the health of the water. But the poem I'd like to start with is actually not by me. It's by Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish. It's from his book, A River Dies of Thirst. And I think of this poem as a warning of what happens when war is allowed to dominate people, and also a warning about what happens when we exploit and extract the watersheds beyond their ability to replenish themselves. A river dies of thirst. A river was here, and it had 2 banks, and a heavenly mother who nursed it on drops from the clouds. A small river moving slowly, descending from the mountain peaks, visiting villages and tents like a charming, lively guest, bringing oleander trees and date palms to the valley, and laughing to the nocturnal revelers on its banks. Drink the milk of the clouds, and water the horses, and fly to Jerusalem and Damascus. Sometimes it sang heroically, at others passionately. It was a river with 2 banks, and a heavenly mother who nursed it on drops from the clouds. But they kidnapped its mother, so it ran short of water and died slowly of thirst. It doesn't have to be that way. But when it is, we also have to learn from that. And that's why I'm paying attention to the Gitxsan and Wet'suwet'en youth in their work to protect their Yinta and their Laksip, which is their watershed, and their mother. The second poem I'd like to share is from Undercurrent, and it is called Declaration of Intent. Let the colonial borders be seen for the pretensions that they are. I hereby honor what the flow of water teaches us, the beauty of enough, the path of peace to be savored, before the extremes of drought and flood overwhelm the careless. Water is a sacred bond embedded in our plump, moist cells, in our breaths that transpire to return to the clouds that gave us life through rain, in the rivers and aquifers that we and our neighbors drink, in the oceans that our foremothers came from. A watershed teaches not only humbleness, but climate fluency, the languages we need to interpret the sea's rising voice. Water connects us to salmon and cedar, whales and workers, its currents bearing the plastic from our fridges and closets. A gyre of karma and dharma recirculates, burgeoning body burden. I hereby invoke fluid wisdom to guide us through the toxic muck. I will apprentice myself to creeks and tributaries, groundwater and glaciers. Listen for the salty pulse within, the blood that recognizes marine ancestry. In its chemical composition and intuitive pull, I will learn through immersion, flotation, and transformation. As water expands and contracts, I will fit myself to its ever-changing dimensions. Molecular and spectacular, water will return what we give it, be that arrogance and poison, reverence and light, ambivalence and respect. Let our societies be revived as watersheds. There's 3 parts to this poem. That's the first part. And then the second part is this. Because I am part of the problem, I can also become part of the solution. Although I am part of the problem, I can also become part of the solution. Where I am part of the problem, I need to be part of the solution. While I am part of the problem, can I also be part of the solution? 1 part silt, 1 part clear running water, 1 part blood, love, sweat. Not tar, but tears. E inserts a listening, witnessing, quickening eye. Broken but rebinding, token but reminding, vocal buck unwinding. The machine's gears rust in the rain. Moss and lichen slowly creep life back. The rate of reclamation is humble while the rate of destruction blasts fast. Because we are part of the problem, we can also become part of the solution. But who are we? We are the beings who need clean water in order to live a life of dignity, joy, and good relations. Maybe you are part of us without even knowing that you are. Maybe we are the ones who are too often taken for granted or ignored, the quiet witnesses to atrocities, greed, mean-spirited hierarchies, hostages of capitalism. Maybe we are remembering what it means to respect water, because doing so is to respect ourselves, our shared fluid vulnerability, our funny contradictions, our stumbling, dancing, crying, laughing, eating, drinking, pissing, working, playing, burping, farting, messy selves. Maybe we are the thunderstorms that precipitate when too much has been repressed, the weeds that refuse to stop, the coyotes, the grandmothers, the yet unborn. Maybe we are flash floods, demoralized workers, the hospitalized, the angry children who don't remember to thank the water that keeps them alive. Maybe we are system change as well as climate change. Dripping and spitting, we rise. So on the note of system change, that brings me to my second slide, which is the work of Dogwood, which has been working in solidarity with the Gitxsan around trying to stop the PRGT gas transmission line. And I refuse to use the term LNG anymore, liquefied natural gas. I consider that to be a greenwashing of what it actually is, which is fracked methane gas. And so we need to start, or not just start, but we need to repeatedly use language that is accurate. to the best of our ability. And so the last poem I'd like to share is a little part from Beholden, which you might have seen scrolling along on the screen earlier. And I think that'll be a nice segue to Fred eventually. And this was composed with Fred and a bunch of other writers and artists along the banks of the Columbia River. Just paying attention to what the water teaches us and being open and receptive and learning. And there's so much that the rivers and the waters can teach us if we're just quiet enough to listen and humble enough to learn. Am I talking loud enough, Pauline? Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Yeah? All right, thanks. Words pile up like a log jam, dam debris, rip-rap, trouble brewing like a slow-moving train wreck. Signaling maps are not enough unless they are put to the purpose of making a home for elk, caribou, bears, beaver. Imagine salmon when she swam here for thousands and thousands of years before the long, loud, loaded train rumbling through the night, carrying its deadly freight on schedule for the demon of speed, chugging track by track, endless till it's not. Body listens lying on the ground, skull, ear, shoulder, rib, hip, thigh, calf, ankle, foot, toe, everything supported by earth as dream engulfs the dreamer. Return to the story that is going on with or without you. Through intervals of destruction for temporary power or storage that costs more than money can buy. The trees need the river, and the river needs the trees, and we need both river and trees in ways that are buried in bone and sinew, uncanny returns, shifting baseline syndrome, no excuse for not learning the cultures of this land. Better late than never to not take abundance, generosity, or humility for granted on this spinning earth. Keep the language and the story honest. Don't call a reservoir a lake. And I would add, don't call fracked gas LNG. Don't naturalize the hubris. Don't hide the arrogance of destroying what you don't understand. Listen for what's underneath the narrative of convenience, the inadequacy of speed and progress, or its deadly outcome. From the perspective of trees and herons and wolves who remember the before, the during, and the after as we wait for the leap to take hold, or for the machinery of greed to dig a mass grave, for those who refuse to learn to respect the land, the river, and those who are unwilling or unable to stop them. Some capitulate to Stockholm Syndrome, some are declared extinct, but they remain synixed, not vanishing as Christos foretold. After the flooding of homes, farms, hunting grounds, after the forced evictions, after the burning, the violence, the indifference, after the betrayal, the inadequacy, the mistakes, the ghosts, the spirits, the survivors remain and remember the future. Thank you.
Let our societies be revived as watersheds. Thank you, Rita. Annie Ross, Maya Irish, is a professor in the Department of Indigenous Studies at Simon Fraser University. She began her education at home with plants, animals, art, indigenous handwork, storytelling, and history in Compton, California, from parents dispossessed of their traditional lands. She developed and taught courses focusing on rights and title, environmental justice, and testimonial as a means to remedy past political oppressions. Indigenous art histories, technologies, studio, craft, weaving, poetry and poetics, and printmaking as part of a panoply, a canon of what we mean when we say indigenous bioregionalisms. Welcome.
I can just project from here. Can you hear me all right? Is that right? Okay, thank you. Thank you for being here and the gift of your presence and being together. I appreciate the life we're all living and time. So I have a gift for everyone. These are actually two different paintings. And they're the poems I'm going to read on the back. So please, 1 and 2. Sure. And just as an acknowledgement. Oh, I need one to read from. Sorry. I'm doing stuff like that all the time. And I have to say, I really love what Rita said about say what it really is. That's something I love to tell my students and pester them about constantly. And also, I think it was the poet Wendell Berry who said, spend a day, if you can, an hour, saying exactly what you mean in its fulsomeness. And it's exhausting. To really say, don't, go over here, because humans don't talk like this, we're like this. But I think it's a great exercise for people to try. Do you think so? Yes. It's a good one. He's awesome. I was thinking about water, well, always. And I wanted to share some thoughts about it. The first thing I think is in my daily practice that I learned from an elder in San Ildefonso Pueblo in northern New Mexico, give love and thanks to water. She begins and ends every conversation, give love and thanks to water. And I like that. And even if I'm having a hard time or thinking about something, I think about water in all its forms. And we have the snow and ice and the clouds and the bay and salt water and fresh water, our sweat, our breath. Give love and thanks for the breath that we each have and commingle with. So the water's forming, the clouds are forming in this room right now. And wherever, there's a belief that wherever people walk, we leave our sweat and our breath, and that's remembered by the land. One of my other painful interests besides life is nuclearism. And I think about water. I was at a museum in Las Vegas, and I'm the only person who go to Las Vegas and have nothing to do. I think many of you might know what I mean. And there was a new museum at the time to nuclear energy, and it said, it's just like a tea kettle. All you have to understand is the bomb-making machines and waste-making machines, whose byproduct is a small amount of electricity. Major byproduct is waste you can't control or live with or survive. But to them, it was just a tea kettle, back to the language, back to what we are. And I might be a lot of things. I'm not nuclearism, and I reject it with everything. And I think of the gift of water. We ask water to cool the rods in the power machines. And oh, and by the way, there's a big resurgence of nuclearism in order to power AI, which is a very disastrous, horrid thing. And indigenous communities are targeted for the uranium mining and also for the dumping of highly radioactive waste. We ask water to cool the rods. We ask water to clean. They will site nuclear plants along riverways. I'm thinking of Rita's riverway and thread. And so the water rushing by, doing as it does, cools. And you remember Fukushima and what happened there with the water and the ocean coming in, asking to dilute, asking to cover up, asking to cool, asking to heal. Water is the first medicine. Water is the first doctor. So love and thanks. I give love and thanks. I think about who is redemption And for me, maybe for others, it would be water. Who is salvation? And I would say water in all of its forms. And I'm thinking of what Daphne had said also in terms of your water and it is an I. Is that what is the quote?
I am the river and the river is me. It's a Maori.
Beautifully said by you. Thank you, Daphne. So I just have two poems. And this one was written on my way to work at SFU, where some people say SFU is a land development company that a college happens to be on. If you go up there, you'll know exactly what that means.
Say that about us too.
Sorry?
Say that about us too. Let me see.
Oh, I don't know. Do you think so?
Yeah. A little bit.
Thank you. Well, simpatico then. It's hard to live with that. It's hard to see that. For me, it's very hard to witness that. This one's called Home. He is 1 year old, I don't think 2. Heavy hair coat shines, turning black to silver in the light, just as rivers are called tears of the moon. As clouds transform from mist to ocean, from clear to salt, from rivers to food. Everyday miracles fall, continue, regardless of who looks on, upon, or away. Like an old man, measured, unhurried, confident in life's hardships and joys, he walks the determined path one could mark with a compass or a rule, across this street. He's broad-shouldered, he is looking for berries. I pray he finds many. May humans on our shared trails who already have food leave food for those who do not. How beautiful that he is alive. Our moment cannot repeat in the kingdoms of Tuscany, New York City, or Paris, where oldsters like me go for a better reward, it is said. He and his kind are why I shall never eat a croissant at a French cafe after viewing Renaissance painters, why I shall have no villa, no boat, tooling the Greek islands. His eyes shine at night is all I can ever hope to see, be. I look for him, I don't look for him, and he appears. And those are the bears on SFU Mountain. I pray for every day, for their safety. The second poem is Dark Glacial River Waters Over Boulders. Many eons passed before humans wore today's form was snow. Beings here before the dinosaurs shuddered. Dark glacial river waves fell over boulders, dressed air with ions, made moss. As everyone become into our determined many manifests, our destiny to become again glacial, flowing streams. Earth's coldest cold, brittle ash, and albatross atop ocean's wells. Earth welcomed more rain, snow to come and do the work of scrubbing all bright to essential good. Was there cleanliness after the fierce humans? An eternal ask. Elder snow rested, many ancestral snows mixed atop, froze, layered sands and soils, gave home to worms and others who think cold is just right. This water is black, slippery, hard, and tight. From the time of the monsters, cannibal birds, the great flood, the changing of worlds, all held fast, now breaking, melting glaciers, rushing to saltwater land's end. Meanwhile, I gather alms, give thanks, bow deeply to these, up and down and in and out. Does any of it make a difference? Yes, to ends, endings, and the beginning of the next coming in. Thank you very much.
The first medicine, water, is the first doctor. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Fred Waugh lives in Vancouver and the West Kootenays. His writing includes Diamond Grill, a biofiction about growing up in a small town Chinese-Canadian cafe, Sentenced to Light, collaborations with visual artists, is Adore, a series of poems about hybridity, and Scree, the collected earlier poems. More recently, Hai Mak, Amok, playing Chinese, an interactive poem, music at the heart of thinking, improvisations, and with Rita Wong, Beholden, a poem as long as the river. Welcome.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the three who preceded me in dousing us with all kinds of wonderful thoughts. I'm going to basically give you a kind of some selections from this little book called "On My Way to Get a Pail of Water." So it's really a book sort of about Beholden and about the writing of Beholden and sort of what's behind it. And I've tried to take out a few sections that might mean something. Sound okay? Water is such a natural and available reflection of its own meaning, particularly its improvisational possibilities, that it can function as a palimpsest for the flow of language. I'm trying to think about what this means for me while on my way to get a pail of water. Words and water, poetry and rivers, repairing the riparian, exploring the ways in which water has operated as a basic unit of composition in my writing and as a primary element in poetic processing. The title is from a poem I adapted from a pictograph at Canal Flats at the source of the Columbia River. So it's a rock painting, an old poem. On my way to get a pail of water, which way? Down by the creek, down by the dark, and in the trees the night. Ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. Beholden, a poem as long as the river, a collaboration between Rita and myself, was published in 2018, addresses the confounding dynamics of border, nation, and treaty, the socio-political dimensions of place and names, colonization, dams, and salmon. It is a statement of geopoetics and the creative undercurrent that surfaces in our liminal encounters with the landscape of creeks, ponds, lakes, and oceans. A lot of our work around the Columbia River was situated because of the Columbia River Treaty, which is currently being negotiated and is just finished being negotiated. We'll see what Trump decides to do about it. Rita and I each wrote a text that follows all 2,000 kilometers of the Columbia's meandering footprint, manipulated into a horizontal 114-foot banner designed by artist Nick Conbear. Rita handwrote her poem on one shore of the river, and I keyboarded my text on the other, both starting at Canal Flats, the beginning of the river at the head of Columbia Lake. Every once in a while, we crossed textual paths at a bridge or dam. Each of us spent time exploring the river in various stretches, all the way to its mouth near Astoria, Oregon. We then spent several months writing our long poems along the river, not necessarily in conversation, but each with an eye on both shores, searching for a language that feels true to our own poetics. I use the term poetics, you can think about that in terms of ecopoetics, here not as the study of or a theory about literature, but as in its practical and applied sense, referring to the tools designed or located by writers and artists to initiate movement and change. It's a long poem, part of that sort of long poem tradition in Canada, so popular in the 70s. A major facet of the long poem's aesthetic is its resistance to closure, its desire to not end. The poem as a river. Also, on my way to get a pail of water, I've tried to think about what the river means, both historically and now in the face of climate change. This is a rather philosophical reflection, and for that I turn to the Chinese Taoist classic, The Secret of the Golden Flower, for its phenomenological perception that that which exists through itself is called meaning, or Tao, or the path, or the way. Jeanette Armstrong, in her poem Water is Siwilk, uses a similar address. Siwilk is a sacred word in Okanagan cosmogony, and Armstrong's use of it to characterize water is useful to measure the river's meaning as itself. Water is Siwilk, she says, toward this knowing that you are the great river as is. Yes, the river is the isness of itself, the verb to be. Parallel to this 2,000 kilometer stretch of water we've defined as a river, the poem must reflect the same innate characteristics. It must be unpredictable, uncontainable, erratic, evasive, assimilating into itself whatever it encounters, clay, stone, word. As Beholden encounters the sad devastation of the dam building all along the river, it seems the only way to write through this is to turn to a more song-like, dirge-like poetry. After moving past the Mica and Revelstoke dams into the Sinixt territory of the Upper Arrow, I felt an anger about this rape of a region I considered home. The impact of the Columbia River Treaty 1964 on the environment, on Indigenous rights, on the orchards, dairy farms, and other valuable real estate that disappeared under the reservoir still causes ripples of resentment and injustice around the Arrow Lakes today. Whose house and whose home now, Big Eddie says to the logger who thinks from the heart. Become like water, my friend. Now heading home, I want to shout, hello, Grandpa. Goodbye, Caribou Ferry. Thanks for this name. Inconaplus, Sinixt, Inkmalaps. Thanks for washing out that logging road and protecting the old growth cedars. Such nominative power is worth more than the mathematics of extraction. Someone's village has become Mud Lake. Bull trout's waiting for some silt-free water. How are you, Blue Camas, shaken in the dust? Just call the wetland back. Find a river you can trust. Ain't this dam messed up your plan to keep this spirit flowing with respect? Will the riparian ever be repaired? Will the salmon ever return? Has the river taught us nothing? When will we ever learn? Here's the river talking. I pass the mouth of the Pond Array and come back to the border. As a river, of course, I'm neutral. And I couldn't care less about this arbitrary boundary of the 49th parallel, reinforced by the 1846 Oregon Treaty. I just roll on. I don't think about how unique I am, bisected as a north-south river compared to the eastern waterways, the Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence, used as the no trespass sign between two pieces of property. I hardly noticed that Canada, the apple of John A. Macdonald's eyes, was celebrating its 150th birthday in 2017. Yet because I'm under the renegotiable scrutiny of the Columbia River Treaty, and because the discourse around reconciliation with Canada's Indigenous people is at the forefront, I slow down briefly to reflect on the roots of my identity as river, akin to the Latin rivalis, meaning rival, and reminding us of the militancy so frequently signified by water and rivers. Tainted as the signature of treaty and all the forked tongues whispering, doctrine of discovery, not a rival but a river, not a period but a bullet, not a treaty but a trait d'union, not the floods of 48 but be prepared, not the International Joint Commission but the Army Corps of Engineers, not waving but drowning. Could the Columbia River Treaty, after initially ignoring Indigenous fishing rights and burial sites, learn anything from the spirit of treaty making from Indigenous peoples? Could we not make an effort to practice a poetics of listening as listening? as Vancouver poet Christine Stewart admonishes. To hear might be to see with an ear turned and tuned to the telling of material resonances. To listen might mean to locate the hum of reciprocations, to locate the relations that bind us, like the compelling acoustics of a creek bed that we could return to. As I also am compelled to return to the creek to which I'm going to get a pail of water. On my way, I listen to the silence of myself, that silent music at the heart of thinking, the silence beneath the surface. And a little past Portland, at Astoria, I try to pay attention to the hum of the incredible passage of surf along a huge sandbar as the Columbia River meets the Pacific Ocean. The river's voice ignores the quiet secrecy along Lakeshore Drive. No bavardage, no idle chit-chat. With another national wildlife refuge, this mighty voice refuses to negotiate, but sings a little harmony under the squeaking wheels of the Portland and Western Railroad. There is no hymn to the fallen river. So where are these words coming from? Is that an international echo in the back eddy? Are the police still chasing almighty voice? When swallowing water, get out of the way. When the line disappears, talk to the hook. By now, we know you're not pure and you just make it up. Sometimes I feel I'm lucky, even grateful, to have listened hard for the river's voice. But sometimes it's just those gulls or children screaming from the greed of Forked Tongue Point, not the voice of the river that moaned Cape Disappointment in 1788, when the river sang clear, shining water. Those Europeans could have heard its visionary recital that this river is the way home, the return to what we have left, that this is the place where I come from. I was on my way to get a pail of water down by the creek. I heard a hum, ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. Hello, ocean. River's mouth, thanks for listening to this stream of words. Become the surf, and now the river's voice is free to roar within the sound of silence. Thank you. Oh, by the way, I just want to mention, it brought along a few copies of Beholden if you're interested in purchasing a copy. They're over on the table there.
Long poems, resistance to closure. Thank you, Fred. Thanks a lot. And thank you, Rita. Okay, now this second part of it, I think like this is almost the core of the event. Now, Fred, Daphne, Rita, and Annie are going to be in conversation with each other here.
Here they are.
I have one you. And can I ask a question as well before you begin the conversation? Is that all right? Yeah. So, a few weeks ago, while planning this event, I invited a very fine poet of the Anthropocene, Laurie D. Graham, to ask a question, if she had a question for the panel. And this is Laurie's response. I'm going to read you what she sent me. Hello, Daphne, Rita, Annie, and Fred. I'm a great admirer of your work and your poetic practices. My question is many questions, so you can follow whatever tributaries you wish to follow. Do you have to be near water to write about, to, of, for, or with it? How has proximity to water, relationship with water, informed your poetic practice? How would you describe your relationship to water as a poet? And what has water taught you about poetry? There are many questions, so let me read them again. Do you have to be near water to write about, to, of, for, or with it? How has proximity to water, relationship with water, informed your poetic practice? How would you describe your relationship to water as a poet? And what has water taught you about poetry?
Well, I seem to need to live by water. I've lived by the sea. I was born by the sea in Australia. I've lived by the sea, except when I had to go elsewhere for work. And when I was inland, I always felt dried up. I don't actually have to be beside water to write. I have to be in a watery environment. And I am very worried about the fact that we have no rain in Vancouver for all these weeks. What is it? There is a rhythm to water. You know there's a rhythm. You hear the rain pounding down. You know there's a rhythm. You hear the river flowing. I think I first found out about the connection between water and non-existence, standing on the edge of the solo Fraser River in Steveston. Actually, this is an aside, but it was brought to life when CBC Radio did an on-site recording of a radio version I did of it, and the technician fell off the boat into the river. It was a very worrying moment. Fortunately, he missed the propeller. His head missed the propeller, but it was a very worrying moment. And that was another example of not just human carelessness, I suppose, but also the power, the sheer power of the river, of that force, driving him away out to sea before he could be picked up and rescued. Water is, as we have all said, a part of our bodies. We came from water. And the fact that we have so objectified it, that we have destroyed its livingness in our minds, is very distressing. And I think that's what each of us are working to restore as in what we write. However we do it in different ways. Am I answering the question?
One of my first books is a book called Tree. And I just sort of, a long time ago, I wanted to be, I think one of the lines is, I am that tree. I mean, I just wanted to be the tree in the poem. And that's been a hard thing to learn with the river when working along the Columbia River and trying to find a way to be the river. And there's no way around it. We're in language. We have to use the language the material that we're given to work with. At the same time, the sensibility or the proprioception involved in being with water, being with the river. Like Daphne says, it has rhythm, it has movement, it has substance, it has shape, it has secrets, it has all kinds of stuff going on for it. And so that it's like just to be water, to be like water, my friend, to be, what is it you said? You are the river.
I am the river is me.
Yeah, the river couldn't care that's what I'm doing. I don't think. Maybe it does, I'm not sure. I don't know, but I have to be, I think, what I've learned about working with trees, with the river, and this is in terms of ecopoetics, is that if it is a kind of poetics, if it is a stance towards the world around us, to the things around us, to the elements, the trees, the earth, the water, that's who we are. We are it. And there's no, I don't want to kind of objectify the river. And one of the things Rita taught me when we were working together was, she said, she kept saying, let's not recolonize the river with our language, with our, with the approach to it. And I think it was really a valuable insight of hers, was to not try to take it over, not to try to, and so much about how we write about the world out there is a kind of an appropriation somehow. I don't know. I can't answer any of those questions.
I would just say that if I wasn't near water, I wouldn't be alive to write. So it's a given that I'm always going to be near water, whether that water is underground where you can't see it, but you can hear it or you can sense it, or if it's coming down from the clouds as rain, or if it's raging beside a river or a waterfall. Like, we're not around unless there's water around. And so the way I talk about it sometimes when I'm visiting a class is like, I was taught that the hydrological cycle is this thing out there, but actually we're part of the hydrological cycle, right? And as we're all trying to say in different ways. And if we weren't, we wouldn't be around. It's that simple in some ways. Just try going without water for a few days and then you'll know how much you are part of that or how much you rely on that, right? And then I was thinking many years ago when Fred first started teaching creative writing at the University of Calgary, and I was in his class, and I think it was that class that you talked about the middle voice. And that sense of, so it's not the active voice or the passive voice, but the middle voice, if you go back far enough grammatically, where the actor is being acted upon equally. So that sense of reciprocity that is grammatically possible is really hard to do in English. But I think water is one way into that, or to kind of restructure or rewire ourselves that way. And then, I also really appreciated how Annie started with gratitude, because I think the water doesn't lead us, but I think that when we're grateful, when we're loving, that it sends it back to us in a way. And so, it reflects, if we're going to be extractive and greedy and arrogant, that also reflects back as well. Like whatever it is we give it, or it's not even the right word, you know what I mean? But whatever we give that force or that being that we call water comes back to us, basically, is how I think about it intuitively.
It's really a gift to be with people who are feeling simple ways, and using words to discuss. That's a real gift. And I thank all of you, and I thank everyone here. For me, often I don't talk unless someone asks me a question. And when I'm asked a question like this, I feel like I'm probably improvising. Because, and I'm not. No one has to believe the things I think or believe in. But for me, there's no separation. The person who asked about UBC and development. I see the bear on the road on my way to work, and I feel I'm the bear. And I feel I'm the deer. I feel I'm the water. I feel it's not an arrogance. It's a giving up. It's a surrender. When you see like a tree cut down. I had a friend who said, "Oh, it makes me really happy. It's progress," and to me, it's like my worst nightmare. It's the end of so many people's homes. And with the old growth, what do they say, 4,000 years for it to return? So I guess the question that comes to me is, what's the ultimate question? What are we talking about? Who's Raymond Carver, to the short story person? What do we talk about when we talk about love? But he meant it in a different way. But when I first read that title many years ago, I thought, what are we talking about when we talk about love? Water is love, the air is love, the ocean is love. It's home. It's breathing. It's it's everything. What do we talk about when we say we're in love with that mountain? We're in love with that, I guess.
With presence. We're talking about presence. And I feel that very strongly when I look at the North Shore Mountains. I'm often talking to them driving down Clark Drive.
Also, when we're, I think I love that sense of presence. And when we're working as poets, and we're thinking about this ecopoetics thing that keeps coming up, I think the word attention is very important. Listening isn't a neutral act. I mean, it's very loud, and it requires finding out how to really pay attention. So that's an act in itself. Being with whatever it is you're working with, the material you're working with, what you're writing about. Everything is involved with a kind of presence and attention. But the presence has to be, I think, at least in terms of ecopoetics, because that's an act that one has to engage with attention.
Yeah, it's almost like it's not about. About is what we don't want. It's with.
Yeah, maybe another way of what you were saying is to recognize how interconnected or interrelated we are, and if you follow the path of water, you see that. Like, if you have trouble understanding it, you could maybe follow it that way physically.